At this point, I will go ahead and turn it over to Mary to get us started.
Thank you so much, Brittany, and thank you everyone for joining us today. I am excited to get into everything today. But before we get too far into that, let's get into our speakers. I'm very excited to kind of have a nice conversation with everybody today. Without further ado, we have Sean Whitaker, a principal engineer primarily responsible for product formulation of the Dello brand of heavy-duty engine oils. He is the chairman of the ASTM Heavy Duty Engine Oil Classification Panel, which is currently developing the next generation of heavy-duty engine oil specifications. Sean's career extends nearly 30 years, focused exclusively on research and engineering of heavy-duty engine lubricants, fuels, emissions, and materials. Before joining Chevron in 2013, he spent 12 years leading global fluids and materials engineering activities for Cummins. He has also spent 5 years conducting lubricant, fuel, and emissions research for the Department of Energy's National Renewable Energy Laboratory in Golden, Colorado. Sean has a bachelor's degree and a master's degree in chemical engineering from the University of Dayton in Ohio. Next, we have Nick Makata. He is a fuels engineer working as part of Chevron's fuels technology team. Nick works with chemists to show the performance of fuel additives, which are part of Chevron's retail and aftermarket products. Nick represents Chevron in the diesel performance and emissions committees and at the Coordinating Research Council, where OEMs, energy companies, and regulatory agencies collaborate on joint research projects which advance the transportation industry. Prior to joining Chevron, Nick spent 10 years developing diesel engines at International Motors, where he spent countless hours testing medium and heavy-duty trucks in extreme environments across North America. Nick has a bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering from the University of Illinois at Chicago. Dave Slade is Chevron's principal biofuel scientist. He focuses on technical topics throughout Chevron's biofuel production, distribution, and sales network, dedicating his time to expanding biofuel utilization opportunities while advancing bio-based diesel manufacturing technology and quality standards. Dave has worked in the bio-based diesel industry for 19 years, beginning with a biodiesel startup named Renewable Energy Group, which grew into the nation's largest biodiesel producer, and continuing for the past 3 years with Chevron. He has a PhD in chemical engineering from the University of Kansas. As we get started today, I want us to take a minute and imagine a world where your fleet runs smoothly with high-quality fuels and lubricants tailored to meet your unique needs. Less headaches, communicating with your fuel supplier, one lubricant product that works for you across your fleet, reducing maintenance, confusion, and streamlining operations. Chevron is the only major fuel provider that offers the full fuel suite, including petroleum diesel as well as gaseous liquid renewable fuel solutions, as well as lubricants that can work in mixed fleets. Today, we're going to discuss what that means for customers in practice. Chevron is the source for fuels, lubricants, and insights. With a wide array of products, trusted experts, and decades of expertise, the Chevron advantage is more than just fuel. Countless fleets have been there, curious about renewable fuel options, but unsure of where to start. What renewable fuels are readily available on the market today? What options could fit in your fleet's needs? Where does conventional diesel fit in? We know that it can be confusing to explore your options, so we're going to lay the framework for our conversation today by defining what fuels Chevron offers. That imaginary world is not too far off for Chevron customers. To get started, the Chevron team is going to first explain what fuel and lubricant options Chevron offers. Dave, why don't you kick us off?
Yeah, thank you, Mary, for the introduction. So we're all very excited to be with you here today to help everyone learn more about the fuels and lubricants that we at Chevron offer. We're going to discuss a wide array of options, including petroleum diesel, renewable diesel, biodiesel, compressed natural gas, renewable natural gas, and even hydrogen. First, it's important to acknowledge that petroleum diesel has been used for over a century in compression ignition engines. So there's proven reliability and familiarity with diesel fuel, and we all know that it can be used in many applications. You could call it a mainstay in most fleet and carrier fuel portfolios. So some of the solutions we're going to talk about today could be blended directly with petroleum diesel, while others could be used alongside it, but require other equipment. Because some of these solutions do require either engine modifications or vehicle upgrades, let's start by exploring the direct replacement fuel options that can typically be used without any equipment changes. And those are biodiesel and renewable diesel. These are made from a variety of plant and animal-based feedstocks. Both fuels can be a direct replacement for diesel fuel, and both can help reduce life cycle carbon emissions and provide optionality to users who don't want to make changes to their existing equipment or fueling infrastructure. Biodiesel has been used in engines since the early 2000s and has become a year-round option as a blending component for petroleum diesel fuel. Biodiesel can reduce engine out particulate matter emissions by roughly 50% and hydrocarbon emissions by more than 60% when compared to traditional petroleum diesel. It also offers really nice life cycle greenhouse gas emissions reductions. Renewable diesel, while newer to the marketplace, has been available in commercial volume since the mid to late 2010s. It's more similar to petroleum diesel and meets the same ASTM D975 specification. Renewable diesel is becoming a popular choice, particularly in California, as it can help reduce life cycle carbon emissions, deliver strong performance, and can even reduce engine out NOx emissions compared to ultra-low sulfur diesel, or ULSD. All three of these fuels, petroleum diesel, biodiesel, and renewable diesel, can be used individually or in 2 or 3-part blends. So from a supply standpoint, petroleum diesel and biodiesel can be found across the U.S. in various blends of usually B0 to B20, with higher blends available as well. As an example of this, Iowa recently passed a B30 tax credit that incentivizes a 30% blend of biodiesel. And we already have several Iowa fleets that have been taking advantage of that. Renewable diesel, on the other hand, is more readily available in markets that have programs with lower carbon fuel incentives, such as California and Oregon. Most of the renewable diesel, therefore, can be found in these markets, although we are starting to see some supply to other locations and customers across the country. Nick, I'm going to turn it over to you to talk more about the gaseous fuel products we offer.
Thanks, Dave. In addition to the liquid products, which David mentioned, Chevron offers gaseous fuels, which can be a great fit for customers who have lower carbon intensity goals. Compressed natural gas, renewable natural gas, also known as CNG and RNG, and hydrogen are lower carbon intensity fuel options that could be considered. When I talk about carbon intensity, that refers to the mass of carbon dioxide equivalent greenhouse gas emissions per unit of energy. So first, what is natural gas? Natural gas is it's a colorless, odorless fossil fuel, and most of the natural gas in the United States is considered fossil fuel because it is made from organic materials which have been exposed to heat and pressure over the course of millions of years. It can be found in subsurface reservoirs or in tight formations like shale and extracted by various methods. Now, RNG, on the other hand, is a fuel made by purifying biogas, which is produced by the anaerobic digestion of organic waste. Material from wastewater treatment facilities, landfills, or manure from dairy farms are examples of where this material can be sourced. Anaerobic digestion takes place in sealed reactors called digesters, where microorganisms consume this material and produce biogas as a byproduct. So this biogas is then purified and upgraded before being injected into a natural gas pipeline. This process captures methane, which is a potent greenhouse gas that would otherwise be emitted to the environment and atmosphere to be used as a fuel. And so both CNG and RNG they have lower carbon intensity than petroleum diesel, which can make them attractive to customers who have life cycle emission reduction goals. Now, it is important to note that using natural gas as a fuel does require a different vehicle than traditional liquid fuels. And while that does represent an investment, natural gas engines eliminate the need for advanced after-treatment systems and components like your diesel particulate filter, diesel oxidation catalyst, SCR system with diesel exhaust fluid. Those are not applicable to CNG engines. So that does offer some simplicity and potential savings when it comes to maintenance. Now, let's talk briefly about hydrogen. Now, hydrogen, it's an emerging lower carbon intensity fuel option that can be produced from a variety of methods, including steam methane reforming with natural gas or renewable natural gas, or electrolysis of water using electricity. And these pathways have the potential for lower life cycle greenhouse gas emissions. When hydrogen is used to power a fuel cell on board a vehicle, The only tailpipe emissions are water, vapor, and warm air. Now, we are an investor in a company called 1H2, and we intend to use their mobile hydrogen refueling trailers to close the gap in the hydrogen supply chain. Their equipment enables us to bring hydrogen to locations where our customers need the fuel, and by working together, we will have the ability to go to market, ultimately adding to our portfolio of fuels, which we provide customers with options as they evaluate their lower carbon intensity journey. And in California, we've recently opened 2 retail hydrogen fueling stations to supply the light-duty passenger car market. We also have experts actively involved in development efforts to standardize the processes and equipment needed to refuel heavy-duty vehicles in the future, building upon our experience in the light-duty market. And I'm going to pass it back over to Sean, who's going to provide a perspective on our lubricants offerings. Sean?
Hey, thanks, Nick. The lubricant's the lifeblood of the engine. Heavy-duty engine oils are complex mixtures of base oils and chemical additives, and they're precisely balanced to provide robust protection across a variety of performance dimensions. They're formulated to deliver wear control, deposit protection, acid neutralization, and robustness to premature breakdown. But back in 2007, diesel engines began being equipped with advanced emission control devices to help clean up pollutant emissions from the engine. Over time, small amounts of lube oil are consumed, and they end up in the vehicle's exhaust system, passing through these catalytic emission control systems. Some of these additives can degrade catalyst performance over time, and as a result, engine builders began limiting the amount of sulfur, phosphorus, and sulfated ash, which is a catch-all term for the metallic incombustible materials in the lubricant additive package. Most oils today contain 1% sulfated ash and up to 1,200 parts per million of phosphorus, which are the maximum levels currently allowed by most oil specifications. But Dello 680F isn't like most oils. It's been developed with 60% less ash and 0 zinc and phosphorus, offering differentiated benefits that impact operational and maintenance costs. Later, we'll discuss how this ultra-low ash engine oil improves total cost of operation. But how do fuel and lubricants work together? Earlier, Nick touched on natural gas fuels requiring different engine types. CNG engines have been used broadly in the on-highway market for more than 30 years, oftentimes in mixed fleets of diesel and natural gas vehicles. One notable challenge for these mixed fleets has been the need to carry 2 different engine oils to service 2 different types of engines. But with Dello 680F, you get the best of both worlds. Not only is it a high-performing diesel engine oil approved for use in a broad variety of engine models, but it's also approved against the Cummins 20092 standard for mobile natural gas engines. This means that fleets can count on Dello 680F to deliver benefits in diesel applications, but with the versatility to service their CNG vehicles from a single product tank. It's really one product with 0 compromise.
Thank you guys so much for that overview of Chevron's offerings. Now that we kind of have an understanding of these fuels and lubricants at a really high level, we kind of get into how does an operation determine the right fuel and lubricant portfolio? What are some common considerations they could be aware of? And what are some of those overall supplier perspectives? I know that this is a perfect question for Dave, but we just popped off really quick. So that Dave, or no, I'm sorry, not Dave. Nick, do you mind talking really quick about this while we wait for Dave?
Absolutely, Mary. Yeah, thanks. So covering for Dave, so on liquid fuels, for example, that might mean pointing someone to a truck stop with an 80% renewable diesel, 20% biodiesel blend in California, while also providing that same customer with a 17% biodiesel, 83% petroleum diesel blend, also known as B17 in Illinois, for their local fueling hubs there. So understanding what's appropriate for the market, regional seasonability, fueling capabilities, and fuel supply all key experiences that Chevron can bring to the table, in addition to high quality fuels and technical. So why explore using natural gas fuels? As I mentioned a few minutes ago, both CNG and RNG have a lower carbon intensity than petroleum fuel, which makes them a good fit for fleets that are working towards lower carbon intensity targets while maintaining similar vehicle performance. So don't just take it from me. Let's watch a short video from one of our customers that found success using CNG.
Hi, my name is Ron Lalo. I'm president and CEO of Gazelle Transportation, LLC. We specialize in transporting crude oil and petroleum products. It's always been our mission to provide a dependable service to our customers. When we purchased our first CNG trucks, it was in 2019, and we purchased 7. And the transition was easier than we actually planned. The power on the 12 liters was a little bit less than the diesel trucks they were used to driving, but they grew accustomed to it. The new 15-liter engines, game changer. Very little difference with diesel and the new 15-liter compressed natural gas engines. The benefit for us running CNG trucks has been lowering our number 2 operating expense, and that's diesel fuel. It's number 2 next to labor. So we've essentially, depending on the route, we've essentially cut our fuel costs in half. The expanded network Chevron's put in place, their CNG stations, is very helpful to bring on more carriers like Gazelle, more carriers outside of our industry. We need to continue to expand that network. For us to adopt CNG, it means a lot to us to just lead. We're a driven company. We're always looking forward at new ways to improve the quality of our service to our customers. You know, we like to be different. We like to try new things, especially if it helps us win. I've spent my entire adult life at Gazelle, so seeing the success from our team, transitioning into new fuels that we're burning in our company gives me great satisfaction.
All right, thank you guys so much. That was a fantastic video. Nick, do you mind kind of expanding on what the CNG advantages are?
Absolutely, Mary. So a couple of things. First, the cost advantages this company found. A CNG truck, it's an investment that can typically cost more than a diesel truck. And that's primarily attributed to the advanced storage tanks. However, as Ron pointed out, the cost of CNG is typically lower than other fuel options, bringing in cost competitiveness to the table. And to reiterate, another major advantage of the CNG engine is the simplified after-treatment system. That means fleets aren't going to have to hassle with DPF ash cleaning. They're not going to have to worry about DOC or DPF filter plugging or hassle with diesel exhaust fluid. So spark plugs do have to be maintained on the CNG engine, but actually on the latest generation Cummins X15N engine, the service intervals have increased relative to the previous version. So Ron also touched on our network of stations. So once a fleet chooses to invest in a CNG truck, customers will have access to our network of over 70 CNG stations along major transportation corridors across North America. So we've already made the investment in building the infrastructure, so fleets don't have to. We'll talk more about the network in a bit. The other point, we do hear from drivers that they enjoy the fueling experience that CNG offers. There's no diesel residue on dispensing equipment or diesel odor. So our stations can refuel a CNG truck in about the same time as a diesel, typically between 10 to 15 minutes. And CNG fueled engines have significantly lower combustion noise than a diesel, and that's going to translate to a more comfortable environment for the driver. So, as Sean mentioned, our Delo 600 lubricant gives fleets that run both CNG and diesel engines an option that will work in both trucks, which reduces complexity at the maintenance shop by simplifying when working with Chevron as a single fuel and lubricant provider. I'm going to pass it back to Sean to highlight some of the advantages of 600 ADF. Sean?
Hey, thanks again, Nick. The versatility that this product offers makes it advantageous for these multi-use fleets, but its benefits are varied as well. Using Delo 600 ADF can significantly reduce your fleet's total cost of ownership. In fact, we named the product ADF after the three most notable benefits. The A stands for After Treatment System Protection. With 60% less sulfated ash, the time between ash cleanings of your DPF can be extended by 2.5x or even more, reducing the cost of cleanings and keeping your vehicles operating in revenue service. The D stands for Drain Interval Extension. Delo 600 ADF has a potent and proven antioxidant and wear control system that helps it stand up to the rigorous demands of today's engines, even under severe duty operation. Extending time between oil changes saves money on oil and filter purchases and keeps the unit out of the maintenance shop. And the F stands for fuel economy retention. Accumulation of oil-derived contaminants in your vehicle's emission control system degrades its performance over time. What some operators don't realize is there's a meaningful amount of fuel that's burned not to provide power, but just to keep the after-treatment system hot, keeping the catalyst active and allowing for regeneration of accumulated soot in the DPF. This fuel economy penalty, as we call it, gets worse as these devices fill with ash. Our testing has shown that using Delo 600 ADF can improve fuel economy retention by at least 3% over the life of the system. And this is on top of any fuel economy advantage your fleet might also be gaining by using a lower viscosity engine oil. So now let's quickly watch a video that demonstrates this product in action for one of our mixed-use fleets.
Each division of our operation has its own special equipment. While they perform different functions, they share advanced oil technology that protects both the engine and after-treatment system. Since switching to ultra-low ash Delo 600 ADF engine oil, we've extended our drain intervals, our DPF life has nearly doubled, even the spark plugs on our CNG engines last longer. The ultra-low ash formula protects diesel and CNG engines. With the fleet of over 600, those gains have made a huge difference to our bottom line. I choose the oil that delivers complete system protection. I choose Delo 600 ADF, the industry's only ultra-low ash engine oil.
Extended drain interval.
Oh, go on, Sean. No worries.
So extended drain intervals and double DPF life and spark plug life extension, all benefits we're thrilled Ecology sees because of Delo 600 ADF. We first introduced Delo 600 ADF in 2019, and it's been used and tested in a variety of applications. End users turn to Delo 600 ADF for many of the performance benefits we've discussed today, and also to help them lower their total cost of operation. We've worked with many of the world's leading engine builders who recognize the advantages of this product. From on-the-road trucks to hard-working non-road equipment in both diesel and CNG applications, the Delo difference is well proven.
Thank you so much for that, Sean. We are going to kick it back. Now that we have Dave back, we're going to kick it back to that ever important fuel journey. Before we get into the importance of why to work with Chevron, we want to kick it back to some of that fuel journey and kind of, take us on a journey, Dave.
I think Mary's intro, and this is a point we really wanted to stress, is this is a journey for everybody, not just the fuel providers, but particularly the people in the transport business. Things have been changing a lot over the last couple decades. So Maybe in your operation, you're still using petroleum diesel only, and you're not really thinking about adding any lower carbon intensity fuels. Or you may have already switched a portion of your fleet over to another newer fuel supply, a lower carbon intensity or gaseous fuel supply. So we have some examples that help show why customers have chosen to choose these alternatives. And I think that many of you, if you haven't already, are about to hear from your customers about these issues. So we're hearing more and more from fleets and carriers who are getting feedback from their customers, the shippers, regarding how they are expected to meet their lower carbon intensity goals. So they've got customers with life cycle emissions reductions initiatives, or their customers have life cycle carbon emissions reduction initiatives, and the organizations have to implement those. So they're looking to fuel providers and their carriers to help make progress toward these goals. The big challenge for the fleets and carriers involved in this is that they're often nationwide organizations. So you have a combination of proprietary fueling locations and on-road refilling options at truck stops. For these organizations, finding a one-size-fits-all solution to support their customers' targets is difficult, if not impossible. And that's where having a partner like Chevron, who can offer a portfolio of solutions and has the experience to know how to implement these solutions, is critical. We've helped a wide variety of customers find the right solution to their refueling needs on local and national levels. As Nick mentioned, we have customers that have filling operations that are different in California than in Illinois or in Texas or Florida. So this is really an example of working with fleets with large footprints to find the regionally or locally appropriate option that helps them meet all their goals, not just fuel economy or their own fuel price, but actually meeting their customers' expectations for lower carbon intensity operations. So we have mixtures of CNG, we have mixtures of biodiesel, renewable diesel, petroleum diesel, and even hydrogen. Thanks, Mary, for the chance to add that content.
No problem. I'm glad we finally got that in because it is an important point. You know, it's not a linear path. It's a journey that you go down, and just because the solution works for you once doesn't mean it's going to continue to work for you. You really got to invest in that partnership. So that being said, we have covered a lot of ground today, from the differences between fuel types, what fuels and lubricants Chevron offers, to actual customer examples, which, you know, those videos were fantastic. I love a video. So we'll open it up for questions in a moment. So if anyone in the audience has any questions, please feel free to put them in our Q&A box and we'll get to as many as we can. Before we get to those questions though, the Chevron team, do you mind expanding on the benefits of working with Chevron as a fuel and lubricant provider? What are the benefits for customers to be able to work with a single supplier? Sean, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, we'd be happy to expand on this, Mary. Thanks. Many of our customers, they're looking for ways to drive efficiency by reducing the complexity of their operation. By having an elegant supply chain, as we call it, is a key aspect of driving that efficiency. As I mentioned previously, Delo 680F provides a versatility that enables fleets to use a single oil across a variety of applications, including on and off highway engines, traditional and renewable diesel engines, as well as compressed natural gas powered equipment. This mitigates the risk of misapplication and reduces the number of lubricant product tanks that you need to have on site. Customers also find additional value in being able to service their fuel and lubricant needs from a single vendor who can tailor their product offer to most precisely match the needs of their operation. Working with one fuel and lubricant supplier can bring synergy to your procurement process. Nick and Dave, could you provide some additional insight from a fuels perspective?
Yeah, Sean, thanks. You know, on the gaseous fuel side, to add to the advantages customers may see, you know, as mentioned, CNG it's historically been priced below diesel on an energy equivalent basis. And that pricing is also tended to be more stable than liquid fuels commonly used for transportation. So where CNG stations are available, fleets may take advantage of savings at the pump. Many states also offer incentives which help offset that CNG truck purchase cost. And those incentives could be in the form of grants, tax deductions, fuel tax reductions, reduced license fees, lower vehicle sales tax, and even lower vehicle registration fees. Typically, the greater the amount of fuel that's consumed, the greater the savings, right? So based on most recent pricing data, you know, for fleets purchasing 10,000 diesel gallon equivalent, CNG per year. That can amount to $1,400 on fuel savings costs. The more you purchase, the more you can save. Dave?
Yeah, thanks, Nick. I'll add some more color from a liquid fuels perspective. So diesel fuel in the U.S. has changed relatively rapidly over the past 2 decades, starting with the mandatory switch to ULSD in 2006, which also happened to coincide with the introduction of biodiesel at commercial scale, and then followed by the introduction of renewable diesel about 10 years after that. Because these changes have increased the complexity of diesel fuel in the U.S., Chevron offers complimentary technical support for any of our customers experiencing diesel quality issues, even if the fuel in question wasn't produced or provided by us. So this service, which we typically provide at no cost, has not only helped our customers work through their diesel fuel quality concerns more quickly, it's also allowed us to stay on top of the real-world issues faced by diesel fuel users today in a way that many fuel providers aren't able to. So at Chevron, we pride ourselves on being the source for both quality products and helpful insights for our customers. If a customer needs support deciding what fuels fits their needs best, we're here to talk through those questions with them. By working with one provider across both fuels and lubricants, you have a trusted source to help you find the optimal solutions for your operation. Choosing the right fuel is kind of like choosing the right tool for the job. It depends on your equipment, your location, goals, and budgets, all things we've talked about today that play a part which fuel is going to be the right fit for your business. Choosing a fuel provider that is the right fit is crucial for operational success. A key part of this is where and how you fuel. So I'm going to pass it back to Nick, who will elaborate on the fueling location question.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. The next question that we get in these conversations is, where do I find these fuels? What is the infrastructure for CNG and RNG? And as you can see on our station map, which is also available as a fuel finder in our website, you can see where you can find the stations across North America. Now, these are going to be fast fill stations, meaning you can expect to refuel in similar times to traditional diesel. And we pride ourselves on our stations being convenient, clean, and efficient so that drivers are back on the road as quickly as possible. Now, Chevron owns and operates more than 70 stations, and there are also more than 700 public fast fill stations available throughout the United States. Now, our latest CNG stations are built with multiple layers of redundancy, and our operators are performing preventative maintenance routinely, which minimizes any station downtime. We monitor station data in real time, and we can proactively resolve issues before they can become problems. Typical CNG station will utilize 2 high-pressure compressors that take the utility gas, compress it up to 3,600 psi for delivery onto the vehicle. And our latest station designs feature 3 fast-flow CNG dispensers, which even when you have 3 trucks at the same time, they can still refuel within 15 minutes or less. And yeah, to reiterate, drivers mentioned they do prefer the refueling experience, traditional versus traditional diesel. Now, biodiesel and renewable diesel are available at our stations throughout the West Coast. For fleets and carriers that are interested outside of that area, bulk fuel delivery is going to be an option to you nationwide. Our team is always happy to discuss these options with customers to determine what's best for your operation. We'd also like to take a minute to highlight the working relationships that are strategically important for our customers, and that would be our OEM relationships. So, Chevron, we are your source for fuel and information. We know that working relationships and collaboration brings our customers better solutions. So let's just highlight a few of these collaborations. Chevron and Cummins have been collaborating on a variety of strategic projects for many years. Our collaboration ultimately helps us serve our customers by ensuring access to lower carbon intensity alternative fuels, including renewable diesel, biodiesel, CNG, RNG, and hydrogen. Now, to that effect, Chevron and Cummins have developed a CNG truck demo program where fleets can let qualified drivers test drive one of our 3 Peterbilt day cabs outfitted with Cummins' latest 15-liter CNG engine for up to 18 days. Deciding to purchase a new truck technology is a big decision. So this try before you buy program is a great way for our customers to experience this technology firsthand before making the investment. Now, the latest generation of engine replaces the previous 12-year model and is available with up to 500 horsepower and 1,850 foot-pounds of torque. It's been described as a game changer by some of our customers compared to the previous generation products. And the demo program, it's just a great opportunity for our customers. Maybe Dave, you want to talk about Optimus?
Yeah, thank you, Nick. So on the liquid fuel side, Chevron also has maintained a strategic partnership with Optimus Technologies. Optimus is a company that's developed technology that enables trucks to run year-round on B100 fuel. So their system can be used with new or used equipment and modifies a vehicle's fuel storage and delivery system along with a user interface to facilitate fuel switching. This includes a separate B100 tank, which supplies fuel into the engine when specific conditions are met. Fuel quality is especially important for vehicles which are outfitted to run on B100. Optimus maintains a fuel specification that's tighter than market standards, relying on Chevron because of the high quality fuel that we produce, which exceeds their specifications. The ability to utilize Optimus and their technology to run 100% biodiesel enables fleets to further reduce the carbon intensity of their operation beyond a B20 blend. So with those couple of examples, we've covered a lot of ground so far today, and we'd really like if you take one thing away from this webinar. We hope you remember that Chevron is the source for not only fuel and lubricants, but also insights and advice. Our team is here to support your operation through high quality products, OEM partnership connections, test programs, distribution advantages, or just conversations to help you find the fuel or lubricant fit that's best for you. We'd love to connect with you and have you connect with our team. So if you have specific questions or you'd like more information, please follow up with us through the link on the slide here. I look forward to
Thank you
hearing.
guys. It's right here. Thank you guys so much for that informative presentation. We are going to start opening the floor for questions. So if anyone in the audience has any questions, please feel free to submit them in the Q&A box in their console, and we will have our experts answer them. I think we're just going to jump right into the questions that we have. And that's going to be, I think Dave will have you start with this. Is it better to focus on a single alternative fuel for diversity across? Oh, let me restart that. Is it better to focus on a single alternative fuel or diversity across multiple solutions or multiple providers?
So that is a great question. We've seen a lot of people interested in a one-size-fits-all silver bullet kind of solution. But what we have found in our customers that are having the most success in changing their fuel needs or their energy sources has been a flexibility toward both fuel and applications that varies by region. In the US, a lot of the affordability of some of these new fuels is driven by state level programs. So there are federal programs that certainly provide a baseline value, but the state programs have really pushed people into the realm of true affordability or even cost savings versus conventional fuels. So we've noticed then that the fleets, nationwide fleets that are able to take advantage of their local incentives or local programs, such as blending incentives in Illinois or Iowa, Texas, low carbon fuel standards in Oregon and California, and now Washington State and New Mexico in the future. Those are the customers that have really been able to drive change faster. So I think the data are sort of in that having a flexible approach and not trying to do everything exactly the same way everywhere across the country has been pretty well proven to be the most effective approach to driving change. So we see people using biodiesel blends in the Midwest, renewable diesel on the West Coast, and then in markets where there's really good advantages or availability of natural gas fuels, there's a lot of fleets switching to local use of natural gas fuels. Those, of course, aren't quite yet ready maybe to do cross-country driving, but someday they'll be there. So I think being flexible and really trying to focus on local opportunities is the right way to go. And that leads to a bunch of complexity, but it can be managed. And then I'll leave it at that. And maybe Sean can add some flavor there.
Yeah, as Dave kind of referenced, versatility is key. I mean, we work with customers literally all over the globe. Majority of them are running a business. So, one of the things that we do before we start talking about the products themselves is really understand their operation, understand the things that motivate them from a business standpoint, some of the things that they're facing from state, local, federal regulation standpoint, and really try to help distill down those things to a set of common requirements that affect their kind of product selection. And one of the things on the engine and vehicle side is that there's been a proliferation of requirements over the past 20 years that have kind of caused a variety of finished lubricant requirements that span different viscosity grades and so forth. And that's really made it pivotal for us to have a kind of a versatile kind of product offer so that we can meet those customers where they're at in their fuel journey, where they're at from their hardware selection, and really try to find the most elegant way to bring products to them that help affect their bottom line.
Maybe I'll echo some of the sentiments that Dave and Sean shared. So on the gaseous fuel side, right, policies vary state by state. Where are the incentives? Where are fleets operating? What does their infrastructure look like? What does their maintenance setup look like? Our sales team would work with individual customers to best understand their needs, and also regionally, depending on which state they're operating in, there's going to be the difference between liquid fuel and CNG, so that varies across the country, and we'll have experts that would help guide their decisions on alternative fuel selection.
I really like those insights. It's that approach, because sometimes when you first start out into this, you're trying to figure out what to do, and it all becomes very overwhelming, and you're like, I don't know where to start. So that being said, if I have an existing fuel strategy, but I'm looking at maybe going to an alternative fuel or start introducing some alternative fuel, what can I do to make sure that my fuel strategy is going to withstand the market shifts? Because, we're all kind of at the mercy of the fuel market. So how do we build something that's a little resilient? Dave, do you mind starting us off?
Yeah, I think it's a great example. So those of you who were on the webinar earlier noticed that my microphone and camera both stopped working. So luckily I had second option on my computer. I was able to switch to my computer camera. That's a perfect example of someone who commits too quickly to one technology. If I hadn't had a backup, I would have been out of luck participating in the webinar. So we have seen this happen for fuel use as well. People who want to use, say, renewable diesel, which is a popular choice these days, and start to build a program around it, and then realize that it's not available in the marketplace where they are operating. And so they have to be flexible. Does that mean using more renewable diesel than they otherwise would have in a state of California where it is available and affordable, and less in other parts of the country? Or what we see, once again, being more successful is people pivoting to biodiesel, because biodiesel is more universally available across the U.S. So there are states, many more states, where it can be found at a cost-effective price point and is available. So that's the kind of example of being flexible, seasonally being flexible. Maybe in the wintertime, I have to cut back on my renewable liquid fuel use because the coal properties aren't the same. And that applies to both renewable diesel and biodiesel as petroleum diesel. But in the summertime, in the warmer weather, I can use more. So these are examples of people being flexible, taking advantage of local opportunities. And then, the gaseous fuels, CNG in particular, is a really exciting option. It's got great emissions benefits. It's available. It's low cost. But it's not available everywhere. So finding a way to blend your fleet where you have some vehicles of different types that you can use regionally or locally has been really successful for people with aggressive change targets. And I think that's really the key. Don't commit too much too soon, but be prepared to move quickly once you develop an opportunity. And I'm excited to see what happens in the gaseous fuels market as we see more and more spread of filling opportunities.
Yeah, maybe one point to add, Dave, on the CNG equation, right? Historically, the price has been much more stable than the liquid fuels market because, CNG in North America, traditionally supplies the power generation market, industrial application, and those customers purchase fuel for extended periods, and so the market's much more stable and that could be a significant advantage to hedge against instability.
So if we're moving into, like, one of the things you mentioned, Dave, was that, in the wintertime, I might shift my fuel because it's cold. There's different freezing temperatures. It's one of the complexities that comes with being cold. It generally tends to throw a wrench in some supply chain operations, but how are the differences in storage and handling when you're starting to integrate this solution in? Like, because obviously how you store diesel and biodiesel or gaseous, all of that is different. So what are some of those differences in storage and handling?
Yeah, that is one of the major, I'll call it, obstacles for folks who want to start changing their liquid fuels. Nick could explain a little bit more. I think luckily gaseous fuels are somewhat immune to cold effects, but there are problems there too. On the liquid fuel side, what we've seen being really the folks who once again are able to make progress the most quickly is that they pay attention to the weather. They work closely with their fuel provider. We have customers that historically, major truck stops, who've let us actually provide the biodiesel blend in the Midwest that we think is going to be appropriate. That worked really well. It enabled them to use higher blends deeper into the season, or if spring comes a little bit early, then being more conservative and sort of dictating your schedule based on historical weather patterns. So it depends on your operation. If you're an operation that stores your fuel for a long time, then you need to be more conservative. But that's the kind of advice that we're really happy to give. We've seen similar things on the West Coast with renewable diesel, where people are excited to use a lot of renewable diesel, but freezing properties are different than that of petroleum diesel. So we work with them on blending schedules, looking at weather patterns, making sure things are appropriate. And then, of course, the petroleum diesel world has never been immune to cold weather. We've always had people who, in Minnesota, they have to use some combination of number 1 and number 2 diesel, so kerosene and diesel, to get through the wintertime. None of that's any different. So really, I think the key enabling feature of this, Mary, isn't so much what's the blend level, but it's really just knowing the properties of the fuels, paying attention to the weather, and working closely with your fuel supplier. So having a fuel supplier that's flexible and can work with you and understands the fuels better has led to much greater success than people who are sort of bidding out fuel and not really knowing where it's coming from, not knowing who's providing it. So that's the recipe for success. And then the last little wrinkle there, of course, on the liquid fuel side is additives. We don't endorse any additives right now for biofuel blends. They're new, but the additive companies are working on this really hard. We do have relationships with them as well. We didn't mention that in our industry relationships, but that's also part of this. So over time, I think we're going to see a lot more optionality for people who want to use biofuels. And then the final wrinkle to that, of course, is your storage, your local storage capabilities. What does your storage system look like? Once the truck's running, it usually stays running pretty well. Oftentimes people experience cold problems, not in the vehicles, but on their fuel dispensing system. So just make sure you communicate with everybody. And we've seen really good luck with people who work closely with us.
So Dave, we have another question for you. Apparently it's just the Dave question hour. How do biodiesel and renewable diesel compare to traditional diesel in engine performance and maintenance? Does it help it? What are we looking at here?
Good question. So I can't give a definitive answer. And of course, engine manufacturers can have their own versions of this. What we have seen in the Midwest, where we've used a lot of biodiesel over the years, in Texas, where say B20 blends have been very common, is that people have not reported increased engine maintenance. We do sometimes see people concerned about engine oil change interval, and that's an important consideration. But once again, with high quality modern fuels, so the biodiesel that's on the market today, as opposed to the stuff that was out there 20 years ago, we really haven't seen that being necessary, even though there might be some guidance. We haven't seen any impacts that we're aware of on engine components, on emission control devices. Those are things that are under a lot of study right now for the next generation of engines. So there's EPA's requiring yet a lower exhaust engine. So keep your eyes open for impacts on that. But with current Tier 4 and below engines, we haven't heard of anything that has led to increased maintenance costs or change intervals, other than some guidance on the biodiesel side. And renewable diesel is still a little bit new to the marketplace. But likewise there, it's been out in California now for approaching 10 years. And we've had really good feedback that people haven't had to change their maintenance intervals or their maintenance costs haven't gone up.
Stepping away from the Dave question hour, I appreciate that. It's like, look, first of all, I feel like anyone that has their maintenance costs not go up is a big win. But Sean, we finally have a lubricant question for you. How does your lubricant choice, because this is something that I don't know if a lot of people think about. I know that I don't think about, but I also am not making decisions on fleets on the daily. But how does a lubricant choice affect the total cost of ownership for a diversified fleet?
Yeah, so there's kind of multiple ways that we look at this sort of TCO calculation, total cost of ownership view of lubricants. I mean, first and foremost, it's the cost that they have to pay for the fluids themselves and the filters, but it can also extend well beyond that. So if we're working with customers that want to extend their drain intervals, the time between oil changes, that oftentimes is kind of one component to it, that they can kind of go longer and cut down on the number of oil changes that they have to do. The other thing that's probably very pivotal to, especially to a lot of fleet customers these days, is the opportunity to obtain fuel savings through lower viscosity fluids. Many, if not all, engine manufacturers today are factory filling with 10W30s, and some of them are even starting to factory fill and recommend even thinner fluids. And that's all with an aim towards improving the efficiency of the engine through using a thinner fluid. And then earlier we talked about Delo 600ADF kind of expanding the realm in which you can kind of attack that TCO question by looking at things like after treatment systems and fuel economy retention to really help expand that. And it's not really just about the lubricant. Chevron offers a number of products to service vehicles, including coolants and driveline fluids. And we really try to take a comprehensive view at kind of looking and how to optimize things from a total cost of ownership perspective through our product offerings and recommendations on maintenance advice.
So when it comes to the Delio 600, there's a new, I guess is it a regulation, the PC 12 that's happening? Will users need to switch from that product when that goes into effect, or can they just kind of keep using it? What's the guidance around that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So some of our viewers here may be familiar with PC12, but others may not. So PC12 kind of represents the next generation of engine oil standards, and it's going to come to life in the early part of 2027. And that's meant to coincide with the next generation of vehicle emission standards, which the EPA and California Air Resources Board are putting forth for emission regs. And engine oils are changing. So I talked earlier about kind of limits on sulfated ash and phosphorus. Those are coming down. Today, there's a limit of 1% sulfated ash. That's being dropped to 0.9%. And then the phosphorus requirements are dropping from 1,200 parts per million down to 800. Delo 600 ADF sort of been ahead of the game. We've been looking, at lower levels of both of those constituents for many years. And because of that, we're already sort of compliant with the requirements that are being proposed for PC12, so there won't be any impact from that industry standard standpoint. So we're in really good shape, and there'll be no need for customers kind of looking for that level of performance to have to make a change.
I love it. You guys are just already on top of things. You're like, guys, don't worry. We've got you. Don't worry. Chevron's got your back. Nick, we finally have a question for you. I think this might round out the last of our questions. So what are some specific examples for, not examples. What are some specific incentives for CNG or hydrogen fueled vehicles?
Yeah, so at least on the hydrogen side, had strong incentives on the West Coast. Heavy duty trucks, there's a California heavy duty vehicle incentive, a voucher program. Incentive up to $240,000 for purchase of a fuel cell electric tractor listed on their website. The policies are going to, incentives are going to vary depending on the state, but at least on the hydrogen side, this policy is strong on the West Coast. And then for CNG, it's sort of it varies depending on the state across North America. So, we want to consult with some of our sales folks to kind of provide you with exact kind of insights.
Fantastic. I like that. I like the approach that Chevron has of, serving as that consultant, serving as that point of information. So that being said, I think we actually, I think we can squeeze in one more question. Why not? Dave, what is the long-term outlook for biodiesel and the renewable diesel availability?
Well, definitely we expect current production levels to maintain. We actually expect feedstock production to go up. So usually when people talk about biodiesel and renewable diesel availability, it's really actually affordability. We can make as much as people want to use, but the deeper we go into the feedstock pool, so the fats and oils that we use, the more expensive those start to get. So really it's almost a demand-based curve, I think, Mary, where if people want the fuel, and usually that comes down to affordability, we can make it. I expect biodiesel and renewable diesel both to be used at high levels in certain states and used at lower levels in other states because of the state incentives that make it more affordable. And that'll probably persist where states that either have or pass new incentives or support for these fuels, or in the case of Minnesota, a mandate, they're going to see those fuels persist. And then for certain operations, people want to use, we have customers building data centers now, and they really want to use 100% renewable fuels, and they're willing to pay a little bit of a premium to bring those fuels to their market, even if they're not incentivized at the level that would make them the same price as diesel fuel. So I feel strong that if people want the fuel, it's there. I think that it's a question of just expressing that and looking for it, and then seeing how the overall economics work with your overall customer support goals and your organization's targets.
That is a fantastic outlook. That being said, we are just about out of time today. I'm going to turn it back over to Brittany to close us out.
Awesome. Like Mary said, that is all the time we have for today. Thank you to everyone again for taking the time to listen in, and a big thank you to all of our speakers for sharing all your great insights with us today. As a reminder, the recording of this webinar will be sent to everyone tomorrow via the email that you used to register with. We hope you'll join us again next time. Thank you so much.